and continue recording. And I'm going to be, just FYI for all you guys, we are recording. If you would like me not to post your abstract on the internet, please tell me, because otherwise I'm planning to break them up and host them on our website and put them on YouTube. So let me know. Thank you guys all for being here and for participating in this. I am thrilled to see what you guys have to offer. And what I really want to do with this is to show you how much fun it is to talk about this stuff. We love it. This is what we do. We all came here. Some of you are in school. Some of you do this professionally. But this is fun. This is interesting. Biology is fun and interesting. Taking care of people is fun and interesting and satisfying. And I think we get away from that because we get trapped in insurance and grants and everything else in the universe and all the paperwork, and it can be a real big hassle. And we don't focus on what is just joyful about this. So I'm thrilled that you guys are all here to be joyful about what is great about discovery, about doing our jobs better, and sharing that with people, and then having a pretty good dance party and eating snacks. So I am excited to have you all here. I'd like to welcome your presenter. So future Dr. Mahnoor Memnon is going to be talking about the association between H. pylori and risk of EOE, inflammatory bowel disease, and celiac in adolescents.
Hi, everyone. So I will be presenting, and its associations with GI disorders in adolescents. And the idea behind this is basically to do a retrospective comparative study. So we're just going to see if there's any statistical significance. So background for H. pylori, basically a bacterium. You could get it through poor hygiene, contaminated water, stool, things like that. And it can survive in an acidic environment of the stomach. It can cause ulcers, but it can also be silent. So once inside, it activates the immune system. And this can last for many years. Interestingly, the same pathways, so Th1, Th17, are also activated in these GI disorders. So I'm going to be going through EOE, eosinophilic esophagitis, Crohn's disease, UC, and also celiac. And the overlap between the activation pathways sort of made me think of if teens who get H. pylori diagnoses are more likely to see these GI development disorders down the road. So I'm going to be assessing adolescents ages 12 to 18 who had an H. pylori diagnosis, and then if they received a GI disorder down the line and comparing it with those who did not have an H. pylori diagnosis. And the idea behind this as well, like I said, the pathways are similar. So I do want to define EOE and what that means. So it's basically a chronic immune-mediated esophageal disease with eosinophilic inflammation. So basically an allergy-like swelling in the food pipe, and food can get stuck. So dysphagia, things like that is what you would see in your patient. Crohn's disease, a chronic inflammatory bowel disease with patchy transmural inflammation anywhere in the GI tract. So this is a long-lasting gut condition that can cause belly pain, diarrhea, things like that. We're going to talk about UC as well. So a chronic inflammatory bowel disease with continuous colon inflammation. And this is basically, your colon gets inflamed and then you can have sores and bloody diarrhea. And for celiac, it's an autoimmune disorder. So that is something to keep in mind as well. And it leads to damage in the small intestine, and eating gluten basically can make your body attack your gut. So there are some, as you can see, inflammatory markers that are going on here. And the method, basically, we used a large medical record database called Trinetics. So the good thing with Trinetics was that we were able to use de-identified records around a lot of hospital bases, and we basically focused it on teens aged 12 to 18. We had two groups, one with H. pylori and one without. And we made the comparison fair by propensity matching. So we matched groups by age, sex, race, and weight. And we used a common adolescence vaccine to sort of ground our timeline. And that allowed us to make a more significant comparison. And we tracked who developed or how many GI diagnoses we had. And we used Kaplan-Meier analysis to calculate the hazard ratio records. So this is the results. I have two sets of results you guys can see. So basically we're seeing that for Crohn's disease, teens with H. pylori versus without had a 21 times more likely diagnoses. So pretty significant, got 20 times more likely for EOE, 15 times more likely for UC, and 8 times more likely for celiac. So these are all significant, meaning that they were not to chance. And if we look at the forest plot, we can see that, so the diamond is the risk estimate and the line is showing the confidence range, and none of the lines touch 1. So that sort of shows us that these are significant statistics we found. And out of these, Crohn's and EOE had the most strongest associations. So now we're sort of trying to think of what can explain this. It's important to realize this is not a causal relationship that we're seeing. So we're not saying teens who have H. pylori are going to get this diagnosis. It's just showing us that there is a greater outcome and what can we sort of look into for that. So basically, H. pylori can disrupt the gut microbiome. So we're going to make the gut lining more permeable and trigger long-lasting immune responses, like I said. So on top of that, we have eradication therapy for H. pylori, which includes antibiotics and acid blockers, which again can further sort of disrupt the gut lining. So the idea here is that maybe these early interventions, the timing of this, and also just the therapy might include something, might better. And yeah, basically teens they do have a more significant diagnosis level if they do have H. pylori, but this doesn't mean that every teen will develop it. So we do have to make sure that we sort of look into maybe what those considerations are, really looking at the microbiome, really looking at, I would say, even prescriptions, things like that, and how and when these teens are getting these diagnoses and how this eradication therapy or something might affect their chances of getting GI down the line. And that is it. Oh, question.
Thank you, Mahnoor. You have a question?
I have a question. Hey, Dr. Levine, one of the GI docs here. That was fascinating. I know Trinetics has some limitations. I was wondering if you were able to tell anything about the time course of when these patients were diagnosed with H. pylori versus when they had a diagnosis of one of these other GI disorders.
So I think based on the stats I got, I think the common diagnosis was around the age of 16, but we did try to match it as well as we could using all those like age, sex, things like that. And then the age range for all the diseases was a little different, but it was definitely farther down in the line. So it
Yeah,
is obviously
right.
Trinetics is it is hard to sort of ground it just because there are so many variables. And even with H. pylori, you have to understand that getting H. pylori is related to things like environmental conditions, diet, things like that.
Yeah,